It seems as if the retail results have been idiosyncratic, but I can tell you what I've become very nervous about is what has powered the U.S. economy for the last 5 years, which is what I call the avocado toast generation. So it's between 24 and 38. So it's the older Gen Z and the younger millennials. And they've really hit a wall. They started to hit a wall this summer. So they've been powering spending at Chipotle, Sweetgreens. I mean, the idea of spending $20 for a salad or a burrito bowl, you don't see me in line at a Chipotle. But I'm not brown bagging it, but at any rate. So the restaurants started to talk about the fact that this demographic was really struggling because of the resumption of student debts. And we went further into that. And if you look at what the avocado toast generation had, they've actually amassed a lot of debt over the last 5 years. So they've got 28% of all consumer debt. They've got about $300 less or more into their spending. So we think about COVID stimulus as being a massive stimulus impact on the consumer. It was $814 billion. Student debt forbearance, $400 billion. So COVID stimulus went out to 165 million Americans. Debt forbearance went out to fewer than 40 million Americans, with 50% of the spending power. So this demographic had a massive amounts of discretionary spending power, and that's not going to come into the economy. And so I think you see names. I was surprised by Urban Outfitter being so strong, because that caters to a very avocado toasty type demographic. But I think you're going to see more and more pressure throughout this year and into next, because they have got a tremendous amount of debt. They have no equity, and they have no way out. And what's going to happen is the Treasury Department has this top program where it's going to garnish tax refunds, and the Department of Education is aggressive on the 20% serious delinquent and charged off loans. They're going to start pulling this back, and that's going to hurt them a lot. And obviously, we know the low end is really strained.
So what's the elasticity of this consumer group, which I would call the matcha generation?
Oh, that's actually,
that might pair
I like
with your
that.
avocado toast generation.
I think it works, or you could call the French press coffee generation.
Lots of options.
Yeah, it's true. The elasticity is going to come down to, I don't think there's a lot of elasticity with this demographic that has so much debt. So the debt gets worse. So the student debt is the one part of the economy that has the highest delinquencies, the highest charge-offs. I think that's going to bleed into auto lending, because the avocado toast generation owns 35% of the auto debt outstanding. So that's going to get crowded out. So you're going to see it factor in. The elasticity, I think, is really interesting in terms of one factor, like one trend that we've been tracking very closely has been home equity loan extraction. And that's been the fastest growing loan category of any consumer loan category. And that started in 2020, in earnest, the summer of 2024. And what's really interesting is, historically, that's home equity loan extractions have been used for home renovations, but now they're increasingly used for cash management. So since 2022, there's been over a 50% rise in home equity extractions use of cash management. Now, that is, every week we look at this. I pull it through Bloomberg, and it continues to accelerate. Now, it's only available for the prime market. So if you have any type of credit ding on your credit score, you can't access the equity in your home. But avocado toasters, by and large, don't own homes, so they have no equity to tap. And if they do own homes, they've got high LTVs, right? Because they haven't owned homes for that long, so they don't have much equity to tap. So that feeds into very little elasticity in this group. And then you think about when you look at 2026 and people get excited about one beautiful bill, tax refunds. Well, if you own a bunch of student debt, you're going to get tax refund garnishment. So I don't see, it's a great question. I don't see a lot of elasticity within this group. Now, that said, there's still so much money swashing through the system, but it's at the high end.
You know, this K-shaped economy, Meredith, is it something that's always been out there? Is it more pronounced in the last 10 or 15 years than it was in the past, do you think? Because it just seems like it's really pronounced these days.
Yeah, there's without a doubt, it's gotten so much more pronounced in the last, really since the great financial crisis.
Yep.
And, it's said by probably the most esteemed person in this building that you can have, a wage, you can have income disparities, but when it reaches a breaking point, it's not good for society. And I think at this point, it's reached a breaking point. So the BEA puts out numbers whereby you see who controls what amount of spending over the course of the years. And I've been going back to, early 2000s. And you can see in terms of spending how much the low end contributes and how much the high end contributes. And that's just been diverging. So the most recent number shows the bottom 40% contributes only 22% of spending, whereas the top 40 contribute 62%. That was much more, that wasn't equal, but it was much more even, let's say 17 years ago.